Grifter's Bible, a novel by El Shabooms, read by El Shabooms, with sound design by Monumental Sonic Architecture. Chapter 15. As the sparks fly upwards. Chuck Vu's mouth exploded. The Right Reverend Randall Roberts shrank back from the verge like Chuck was a chalky chunk of dog turd that he'd almost dug a big toe into. The old jaundiced rat stared a varmint glare at Chuck's dithering rattle. I shrank up. My balloon knot pirouetted. I could hear the cawing mass of birds disturbed by Chuck's quacking as they bustled all along the eave. "Is that boy gonna be all right?" The Right Reverend indicated at Chuck with a palsied crimson digit. Asa snorted in the background like his daddy's question was the funniest thing he'd heard all year. He elbowed little Randy in the side. Little Randy snickered like it was his job. The Reverend's jowls indulged a hound dog's sleepy-eyed grin. "Do I need to lay hands on the boy or what?" He put his ruined fingers up like a surgeon waiting on scrubs. "What's his name?" Little Randy stepped forward. "Let me find his off switch." Chuck buttoned up tighter than a ladybird's twat. He donned an expression as blank as the complexion of your average egg. I could smell garlic and sweaty fat. Chuck's fear was jet metabolizing his first fifth of the morning out through his pores. He was useless as tits on a boar hog. "He's no one. He's just a contractor. Nothing to do with our church." I covered for him. The Right Reverend's gaze shot up. "Our church." He halted little Randy. The Reverend drew in closer. He rose up on his tippy toes, trying to peer like a gopher over my shoulder into the silent darkness back inside. "So you can tell me about that boy with the funny hair in the video." There was avarice foaming up in the corners of his mouth. "Then go on." He licked his bottom lip and prodded. "Well, he's out right now." I didn't try to hide it. "He's running an errand." I did not lie. The Right Reverend sounded unsatisfied. "So what is your role in this here church of ours, as you call it?" I didn't know about that one. In my mind, I stuttered over how to describe what I did without mentioning neuroscience, the hustle, or government property. "Manager?" popped out of my mouth, and I wished I could swallow it back. At that, the Right Reverend dropped back onto his Cuban heels and looked me up and down. "You're a manager and you got no idea where your artist is?" The Reverend was taller than me, but he was stooped like a Skeksis, so he stood eye to judgmental eye. The stiff black hairs in his nostrils reached out like feelers collecting all of the valuable oxygen from out of the air between us. His facial expressions drooped like sallow wax. Deep purple threads knitted a vast patchwork of liver spots and freckles into a quilt of melanoma on his cheeks. His eyes brooded behind fat lids. He nested his shaking hands across his belly. "Well, if you didn't know already, I'm the Right Reverend Randall Roberts. And these are my boys. Asa's firstborn, Randall's the second." He threw a slow nod back over each shoulder. Then the cartoon of a human from local TV fell on me with one eye. "So you gonna stop being rude and introduce yourself?" In his spotlight, I wavered. I tried to reconcile the memory of the man nanny I always called a tuckus-lucker with the altar-cocker standing right in front of me. I wasn't raised to be rude. I put my hand out and announced, "Sorry, Nicholas Franken, sir." My hand was black and dirty from working upstairs, but the way the Reverend froze and just stared at it like a piece of bad meat made me feel untouchable in deeper ways than hygiene. "Franken." The Reverend tipped his head back to speak at Asa without taking his hands off his gut. "That sounds halfway Jewish." Asa snorted and chewed like a bull. The Reverend turned his head back to judge my reaction. I took my hand back from the crocodile. "No, I'm all the way." I frowned him down. Something in the Right Reverend's eyes flickered at the challenge. He seemed to animate into some ancient imitation of liveliness. He shook his head. "Manager, huh?" He stopped and mocked over his shoulder. "Asa, this here's the manager." "The Jewish manager, Daddy." Asa spit his cinnamon gum back out the gate like a piece of throttled gristle. Little Randy sniggered. "Watch your money now, here." Asa sneered like a side of beef. "He ain't gonna do nothing." "Y'all stop it now." The Reverend poked. "Maybe there's more to him than it looks." That's when I got the full-on hairy eyeball treatment. The one eye the Reverend favored took a slow drag from the mess of smudges all over my face to the dirty socks poking out of the toes of my chucks. He stared at my feet so long that I thought he'd fallen asleep. He clearly disapproved. "You got family in show business or someone keeping you afloat?" His forehead crinkled as his neck cracked. I mean, how'd you get into this line of work? He shrugged off his slouch and he didn't wait for an answer. I've known a few of your kind that tried to come in from the outside to manage this church business we're in. Fire rumbled up through his belfry. They're all pushy as kinfolk and worthless as family. Every one of them sitting under a hill of debt today. He was testifying. Management only gets 10%, even in the best of times. He clapped his hands together and showed me both of his palms. How do you reckon on keeping it 10-2 with the sequel to the Great Depression trying to sideswipe you off the road? He had me hypnotized with a ready-made apocalypse. I could hear his shoes squeak like he was crushing baby mice under his heels. The Reverend got a good wind beneath him. I got 40 years in this business. I've earned plenty of financial freedom and I've gathered a fair bit of wisdom. What do I see from where I stand? I can see you got maybe 3 months in you before this all blows up in your face. That boy on stage is a jet engine. You got a paper airplane for a business plan. Your bird won't fly. And I know that because I've seen it 100 times before, though it's never happened to me personally. Your artist is gonna wise up and step out on you. Your audience is gonna drift away to the next new shine. Things just fall apart. The clock is ticking. You can't ride an atomic bomb forever, son. Say yeehaw you won't, but sooner or later you'll hit the ground now, here? The Reverend stepped down from his imaginary pulpit. You might have some good baseball cards in your stack, but your bubble gum is gonna crumble up and blow away if you don't chew it. He cleared his throat. He spit into a paper napkin. Why don't you just cut and run? He came out with it. Huh? I felt the door jam in my back. Seriously, the Reverend tried to draw himself up. Times are tough. No one will blame you. The economy's going nowhere but down. Every rat's got to find them a barn before the rain starts to fall. Why don't you and your superstar part ways? Split the proceeds of this little venture between you. I won't say a word if you take more than your rightful 10%. I know that's just how you people do, making that extra buck in the worst of times. He whittled me down to about 2 inches tall. Come on, you let me step in and steer this shit from here on out now. The Right Reverend waited. I peeled my tongue from the roof of my cotton mouth. Nah, I yammered like wet toilet paper. No, we're straight for now. This guy, Asa slapped his thigh. Nothing straight about him. Randy hitched the back of his slacks up. I heard Asa click his tongue. Nothing's easy. The Reverend said nothing. He kept saying nothing. His eyes didn't move. At the end of a yawning moment, he pronounced, Very well, then. If you're the man to weather the storms in your path, then you're the man I need to warn about a potential lawsuit I see on your horizon. One of my former employees was privy to a wealth of sensitive information pertaining to my organization. Mailing lists of parishioners, customer databases, marketing relationships, things of that nature. If any churches or Christian entertainment entities decide to hook up with this thief, they're going to be held willfully liable for damages, and any court in the land will back me up on that. The Reverend scratched his lip with a thumb. I noticed when I was watching that video of yours that this particular employee was standing next to your boy on the stage just before his manifestation, the rattlesnake twanged. I think you know the person I'm talking about, the Reverend smirked. So what are you gonna do about it? Some hidden uppityness crawled out of its wrinkle in my gut, and I shot back. I know the person you're accusing, and I find it a little hard to believe you over her. I don't know where it came from, but I bowed up like a pipsqueak. I'll look into whatever you said, but I'm not gonna do it now with you guys standing over me, breathing down my neck. So I'm going to ask you to leave. The Reverend stood firm. And that's when Asa decided he had had enough of me and my... He rounded his father's shoulder in a buffalo mood and wedged himself between the two of us. Asa loomed for a huffing second, and then his puffy red face thrust down to within inches of my own. With his finger in my face, he hissed so the whole world could hear. Listen, you little fag. You and your boyfriend stop ripping off my daddy's intellectual property until that black just stops stealing all our clientele. Or else I'll stomp a mud hole in your ass. For real. Without a word, little Randy cleared his father's left hand. He shot his cuffs and flexed all 10 of his sausage fingers. He took one goon step towards me before he stopped dead in his tracks. Asa was breathing cinnamon vapors into my face when I heard a plop like a dollop of yogurt. A muffled drumming dribbled down one of Asa's shoulder pads. He paused his angry bull routine and stood back up. He stared like a dope at his left arm. A pea-green streak of cream splashed down his lapel. Ugh. Randy must have sussed out the situation. After months of gorging on the endless leftover food that deluged the church, the multitude of birds that lined the gutters were fat and always taking a dump. They'd even synced up their timing. It had turned into a real full-time job keeping the patio swabbed clean. A fecal breeze blew brown flecks down the Right Reverend Randall Roberts' cheek. I watched a mist of birch salt and pepper his phony black hair. I took a step back into the narthex. I'm gonna have to clean all this up. A curtain of wet, white, and green bird mess rained down like monkey business between me and the Roberts clan. Daddy! Asa threw a sharkskin forearm over his goateed muzzle. His mirrored shades peered up at the source of the plopping storm. Bubbles of spit popped off of his bottom lip. The Right Reverend started to plots. Randy dragged his daddy out of the way of a second volley of soupy diarrhea. I watched the huddled mass trapped at the iron gate. The remnants of the viscous rain dripped from the gutters like dirty carpenter's glue. And then it stopped. Ace gathered his wits and got up to finish his threat. The floor at his feet was steaming, but a psychotic warning siren went off above our heads. Its echo chattered off of the glass windows. The air was rent with the sound of a dreadful shadow. Little Randy and his father gazed stone-faced at the church facade, aghast before a Ghidorah that I couldn't see. Randy reached back and started fumbling with the latch on the gate. Asa threw his other arm over his face. A wordless rebel screech ripped the day apart. A black curtain fell down between us. Feathers and beaks and claws dropped like pecking raindrops onto Ace's face. They left his cheeks dotted with red tears. His hands were speckled with blood. His menace diminished considerably. The dive bombers flew on and left Asa behind. Randy was fast enough to jimmy the lock, but the flight of birds reached the gate before he could escape. The gate was thrown open. The black wave poured through, roaring over Randy and the Right Reverend until they were forced out onto the sidewalk. I stuck my head out as the birds wheeled up en masse. They hung there, suspended in space 100 feet above Commerce Street. Then I looked over Asa's shoulder, and they were coming back down, as real as taxes. Asa saw it too. There was crap smeared across his cheeks like war paint, but Asa was incapable of strategizing against such an enemy. He was already on the move when the vanguard fell on him. They swept him out the door like a bouncer and Dusty Feathers going ham on some rowdy sod. The rear guard flew out in a cloud of soot, and the gate slammed shut behind them. The squadrons deposited Asa like a sack of trash out on the curb. They circled the block, scared the daylights out of a worker in the bucket of a Lone Star electric truck, and then returned to take their purchase. Little Randy threw the door of the black Cadillac open. His daddy was in the back seat having a conniption fit. Asa took one manic gaze back to scan the church facade for threats. His aviator shades landed on me. Randy got the key into the ignition and yelled, "Oh, come on!" Asa got in. The Right Reverend rolled down the back window and yelled at me, "I want my manavan back too, or else I'm pressing charges on her and her boy." Randy tore ass out of there. There was nothing left but the sound of birds in his wake. I scanned the battlefield until I noticed a rabbit chewing grass in the bushes lining the outside of the wrought iron fence. It was watching me. It saw the whole thing go down. It padded away when I ventured out onto the patio. I covered my mouth and looked up at the eave. So many birds. Chaos. I got the broom. Chuck crawled out of his shadow while I was scraping piles of bird shit off of the landing. I was too busy trying to figure out how to bring up the Right Reverend's visit to Mary and Seth to bother with him much. Chuck was sleepy, so he drove back home to take a drunk nap in his own bed. I grabbed a mop and filled the downstairs bathtub. I did what I do. I waited for Seth. The video's about a week away from 500,000 views. Seth came home hollering the good news. He ran to the stage and logged onto his computer. The browser winked out. The display went black, and then the video opened with a wipe. The sheep went batshit. They threw their hands in the air. Their mouths dropped wide open. Crying eyes, missing shoes, and that gobsmacked wonder was writ large across every single face. We watched it again. We camped out at his computer all evening, replaying the video over and over. We had volunteers all across Deep Ellum clicking refresh for us. Mary had hornswoggled her niche of America into doing the same, juking the stats. On a mission from God. The number of views jumpstarts every night after dinner, Seth announced his observation when Mary walked through the door. I love it, I love it. I could hear the smile in Mary's voice as she marched towards the stage. Well, you know who doesn't love it? I gave her a hand up the steps. Who? Mary's glasses lit up as she approached Seth's monitor. Her blue-black cheeks puffed up. The Right Reverend. It came out of me like a croak. The two of them sniffed a harmonic chord of doom. What? Seth hit the lights. He came to see already, huh? Mary exhaled. What for? Her nerves played out into the ether. Wait. Seth overrode her as he went from 0 to furious in less than a second. He was here? In my house? What for? Seth turned on me with an animal timbre. It was the sound of a bull walrus barking at a baby seal. I snapped to attention. I think he wants to manage you. Seth bristled like I had drizzled hair clippings all over his neck and shoulders. Me? Why? He's seen the video. He knows you've got a thing. I thought for a silent second. He was all about it until he decided to start making a thing out of me being Jewish. Oh, now. Mary gacked her face up. For real? What's that got to do with anything? Seth crossed his arms. I think he was just poking me. Mary snorted. Yeah, that's about his speed. Sure, but then it got really bad, I blundered on, when he started talking about you. Me? She recoiled. Why's he got my name on his tongue? What, is he talking trash? Seth stopped pacing for a beat and bowed up in a challenge. No, he's talking about suing us for infringement because we're using one of his customer databases. I remember hearing my belly turning over. There was a whisper of barometric shift in the room. The bottom fell out of the sky. Mister. Mary got right up in my face. That man never dreams about accusing me of stealing one crumb out of his trash. He better wake up and apologize. She sounded near tears. I realized too late that the bomb that I had dropped had landed on Mary. An old familiar door had been irreparably shut to her. It's hard to watch a grown woman weeping when she realizes she's wasted years tending a flame that never really kept her warm. Who wants to watch some older lady bottom out? It's brutal. Mary tried her best to keep the hitching to herself. What did I do, man? I mean, really, what did I do to him that was all that bad? I give him too many years of my life and service to get treated like this. Then I even introduced him to my boy, and this is how he's gonna turn around and do me when it's time for me to move on? He's gonna follow me around and poison the well everywhere I go? Why's he gotta kick me like a dog on my way out the door? I weakly piped up, Mary, take it easy. No! She was starting to fume. No! She wasn't having it at all. I stepped back. Seth stood like a pillar by her side. Buzzard thinks I came up in here and started feeding you his road contacts? Nonsense! Well, listen, she mustered. I'm gonna untwist this right now. I don't have anything twisted. Seth refused to bow. I know you don't, hun, but listen, here's how the cow ate the cabbage. The Reverend started out as a tent preacher, and he still thinks like one. He's stuck on that level. Back before the internet, tent preachers prized their mailing list, because if they didn't have some sort of list of folks that they could rely on to show up on a Saturday night, then they weren't going to eat Sunday dinner. They'd guard those lists like they were gold. That's old-timey thinking, though. Secrets are all online. Anyone can meet anybody anywhere. These folks I'm bringing you are all my people. I met them all on my own time through the grace of Jesus Christ. If King Rat's got a pitiful turnout on Sunday morning, well, that's on him, not me. He's driving those people away, but he acts like he doesn't want to get that. The more he strays from the gospel so he can sell some new artist he's signed, the more the faithful are going to stray from his flock. Spiteful old thing will end up alone. Fat king on a hill of bones. That's the right Reverend. That settled her. Seth was silent, but he looked about ready to pop. We're not scared and we aren't thieves. She smiled up at Seth serenely. She spoke to the ceiling. Holy Ghost power is on our side. There's nothing that we need to steal. Seth didn't respond. Mary blew a raspberry. She gave me a sassy little pat on the arm. That old man was probably just sunning you. He's just jealous he doesn't know social media. His organization's getting left behind, so he's fighting for his life. Old Coot gets spiteful when he's spooked. That's how a skunk does you. She began to meander through her thoughts. I told you got my boy fired from that job he had. He just loves getting people fired. Seth clenched his fingers up into fists of knucklebone and cable. He's the same old punk he always was. The veins in his eyes flashed bloody murder. His teeth held back a flood of profanity. What is it, baby? Mary put a hand down on the agitated ropes of muscle in Seth's forearm. He's the reason I left the road. Seth threw his words at us in his frustration. He's why I got thrown off of the Nayland Hammers tour. You know Nayland? Mary piped up in astonishment. Seth seethed. I used to. I haven't spoken to him since he fired me from that tour he co-headlined with the Reverend around Y2K. Oh my word. Mary kept a palm over her mouth. The whites of her eyes flashed over her chubby fingers. Mary took her hand away and held the side of her head. I remember that tour. I followed it all over the South for a couple weeks that summer. That was supposed to be Nayland's comeback tour. It almost was. I remember him petering out not long after it was over, though. Seth churned at the memory. The tour was fine, even with the Reverend around. My only screw-up was walking into the wrong door backstage. I barged in on the Reverend hunk 13-year-old girl that was the opening act. He had her face. She couldn't breathe. That old dried-up piece of jerky actually started shooing me. He said get, and I was like, nuh-uh. I didn't care. I went over and dragged his old carcass up. That kid got up and ran out of there crying so fast. Seth's hands started to boil. Man, he spat. I'd still love to wring his turkey neck for that. Hey, Mary barked, taking the hand that had been holding her own. She cradled it between her healing palms. Don't you let that old villain lead you down a hateful path. Don't you let him foul you. Mary squeezed him. The Lord knows you don't mean that. Well, Seth couldn't get out much more than that without spitting. That's rough, I spoke up. Nah, dude, that's not rough, Seth fumed. This is what's rough. After the girl left, he just stood there smiling, because he knew he was holding all of the cards. And I knew it too. He threw his free hand up, so I just had to let it go and walk away. Turn the other cheek. What else could you do? Mary looked up at the pain in his face. I just went out back behind the buses and had a smoke. When I finished, I went back to my bunk on the bus to let off a little steam. But when I pulled the curtain, Seth stepped back from Mary. That girl was laying there. Yeah, boy, I thought. This is getting real. And she's got doll's eyes. He shivered at the memory. I knew I was getting set up when Nayland came onto the bus. He walked straight to the bunks like he knew right where to go, and Seth threw his hands up. And, I said, and I'm just standing there breathing heavy with a pie-eyed teenager that won't pass a kid crying and holding her arms out like she's pushing me away. What'd you do? Mary was scared for him. I wanted to get out of there, but you know who poked his big nose in and blocked the bus door. Your visitor from this morning was standing there in the aisle straightening his tie, smiling like the crack of dawn and still wearing the same suit and pants that he'd done his business in 10 minutes before. He'd obviously been shining Nayland because Nayland turned up ready to call the cops. Could the girl talk? I asked. Could she talk? Yeah, she could talk. Don't, stop, please, no. She knew all sorts of words and she was using them all. She remembered 2 faces, mine and the Reverend's. Whoever put her in the bunk did an awful fast number on her while I was smoking. The Reverend started asking her if she was alright like he was the first responder. When she heard him, she started freaking out, kicking and screaming. I'm the one standing right there, so it looked like I was the one she was trying to push away. Seth stopped. He was breathing heavy all over again. God, he whispered to himself. It looks so bad. Seth shook his head. I came this close. He pinched his fingers in front of me. To going to jail. There was a sound in his voice that would have broken your heart. It was the shadow of the orphan inside of him. The one that had been thrown away as a baby and then jailed as a teen. The kid that had always been shunned poked his head out from behind Seth's eyes. I mean, me and Nayland were friends, I thought. I did for him what I did for Velvet Tea. I was on my way to making Nayland a star. With the Reverend pouring honey into his ear, it was like all that friend stuff was nothing. Friendliest thing he would do for me was to let me get my gear and get out of there. Said if he ever saw me again, he'd call the cops. Holy, I was astounded. I realized that Seth had just confessed that he had been outgamed by this old coot. I'd never heard him admit so much as a peep about this before. The right Reverend had put him in a corner. I could tell Seth fought the feeling. His tone of voice turned down a dark cutback. But that lying bastard still turned the screw, so Nayland booted me without pay. Put me in some pretty hot water when he did it too. Mary put her head on Seth's arm. Whatever he did back then is on him. You helped the girl. You told the truth in the face of his lies. It's all done, and he'll have to answer for everything when they open the books in heaven. He'll meet his maker, same as everyone, and that's good enough for me. It's got to be. You got to take that thought on for yourself. And let it be your armor, too. Scales will balance. The good Lord will fix all this. He exhaled. Yeah, well, Jesus must have noticed because I met my landlord hitchhiking back into town. He let me work construction in exchange for rent on this place. I bought a recorder and some microphones from Vince at All American. Seth was reciting his litany, reminding himself of his victories. I put my ad in the Century. His tone switched to a softer, wistful note. Man, I didn't even have a phone back then. I was so dang poor, I had to get Billy Goat to let me use his number so people could reach me. Seth's head had deflated back to its standard PSI. I had to claw my way out of the hole that rat forced me into. He punched his fist into his palm, but I came out holding a Grammy. See? Mary patted Seth's belly. God don't make no trash. Lightning knows where it's supposed to strike. There was love in Mary's eyes, and a golden emotion shined through a fresh layer of tears. She lit up so proudly around Seth. The good Lord knew what he was doing when he put his power into your hands, baby. And that's better than good enough for me. Seth engorged on her belief. That's my girl. A pressure valve had been released. Mary had to leave for work, so we walked her out to the van. We watched until her brake lights lit up at the red light down the block. So we're turning the other cheek? I confirmed. Seth said, for today, as ominously as possible. He sniffed. But if he comes back around here again, it's gonna be a thing. Don't do anything stupid. I wouldn't piss on him if his hair was on fire. Seth knew how to load a promise. My stomach was a wreck while I waited all week for a return visit from the Right Reverend or his kin. I dreaded a follow-up confrontation, all the dangerous permutations. I woke up every morning churning with worry over that one thing. I waited until Sunday, and nothing ever came. But after the manifestation, I noticed Billy Goat cutting a beeline behind the flock. When I looked out across the heads of the crowd and saw him heading towards the front door with purpose, I fully expected to see someone from the Roberts clan come to mess with the show. The door began to open. There was a head sticking through. I had told Billy Goat time and time again to keep that door locked during every show. As far as I was concerned, his main job was to keep prying eyes from poking in during a service. My belly grumbled with a retch. That's all I needed, Seth jumping off the stage to beat the tar out of some heckler. All of the sheep were filming every second of the show. The whole online world would know about it within hours if something went down. The flock was so thick and the press was so heavy that the door would only open far enough for someone to wedge inside the sanctuary. It was a kid with his head down. He tried to push through to enter the narthex, but when the door wouldn't give, he lifted his face to see what the holdup was. At first I thought he was just some rando, just a curious kid in a wife beater and a tam. His greasy hair made it hard to make out his face. The eyes peeking out from under the bill of his cap blinked when they witnessed the vast spectacle of the mass, all the bodies strewn across the floor. The kid's mouth dropped into a gape and his head shrank back on his neck. He looked up and saw me staring at him over the flock. Even across the room I knew those eyes. They flashed like neon under the stroboscopes. I remembered. Those eyes had been my guide to the sub-oceanic cave after I hit that DMT on New Year's Eve. Billy Goat made his way through the crowd right then. He said something to the kid as he put his hand on the door to close it. Joey Abraham was docile as Billy Goat pushed him back out the door.